Good morning. Hi, Melanie. San Antonio. Fun town. Good morning, Kristen. We got a little bit of sun outside today. We've had rain for the last couple of days, which is wonderful. We certainly needed it. And we're supposed to get some more later today and over the weekend, so we're looking forward to that a little bit. Hi, Lynn. California mountains. Good morning. Good morning. Today we're working on Star Baby, and this one was really kind of a fun quilt. I enjoyed putting it together, and it goes together quickly once you figure out the directions, and so hopefully today I can help you do that. And it is, by the size of it in the book, it's like a baby quilt, and I think that's probably why it was called Star Baby in that. So I want to get started, but before I do that, I would like to let those who sent me pictures of the blocks and things that they were doing, that I really appreciate that, and I would have had them up to show everyone today, but for whatever reason I could not get them to transfer from my photos and my phone into the computer. So I'll figure that out, and I'll have those for next week's, because you should see some of the stuff that people are doing, and I love it. And so I know I asked this question last week, but I'd like to ask it again. What are you personally working on? The pattern, the quilt, is it a gift? Those kinds of things. It's always good to know what you're working on out there. And if any of you are working on some of the projects in this book, you feel free to send me the pictures or put it up on the forum, and we'll get that figured out, and I'll share those with all of you next week. So let's drop down to the book, and this is Star Baby. And as you can see by the size, the 48 by 55, this would make a great baby quilt. One thing that I would caution you on, and I caution you simply because I have made a quilt for a child with yo-yos in the center. And just make sure that when you are sewing those into the star, that you make sure you do a good job, and so that they're very much attached, because little fingers get into those. And I will tell you, from the person I made it for, they like to stick their finger in there or try to. So that would be my only caution with this quilt, and it's probably not even a caution, but I wanted to mention it. So this is what we're going to do today, and let me put this aside. And I have made one for you. Now, if you look in your pattern, you'll see that half of those blocks are two fabrics, and they alternate around the circle. The other three, or there's three of them at least, that they used three different sets of fabrics. So because you're going to cut these fabrics in half, so you would have opposites the same and going around so you could do that. Or if you made a number of these and you wanted to use a variety of fabrics in all of the blocks, you could simply intersperse the squares that you cut within all of the same size stars. So this is what it is, and without the yo-yo in the center, these are the possibilities. And when we get to that, I'm going to talk a little bit about some other possibilities for that center in there. But let's get right to what we're going to do today. And this is very much made like you would do a Dresden plate, more or less. So I'm going to put this aside. And I've already chosen my fabrics, and I've cut one. Now we cut it with a measurement on our rulers. And this one is, the cutting is just a wee bit different. This one is, if you have a ruler with 16th inch markings on it. I don't have any quilting rulers that have a 16th inch mark on it, and that was method 1. But she gives a second method, and that's when you have a 60-degree line on your ruler, and that I have, and I'm guessing that many of you do. So I've chosen a light purple and a dark purple for one, and they're right sides together. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the top light one, you're going to fold it in half, press it so you get that crease, then you'll fold it in half again, going the opposite direction. Make sure you get it. And this is where you kind of really want to get perfection in there. So I don't know if you can, with my camera and the, how bright it is, you can see the fold. And of course, if you're doing it on your own, you really see that fold in the center of that. But for the sake of the camera and doing this, I marked that center with a pin. I used my friction pin and did that. So I have a 60-degree ruler here, and I am right-handed, so it more or less and I have to kind of get this just so, because of my space. It's much easier when you have plenty of room, which I'm sure you would know. So I'm putting my 60-degree line. Let me just adjust that. I hit it with my thumb. And it's going right through the center of that. So right there is the center of that, and there's my ruler. My 60-degree, this is the 60 on the ruler. It goes across the top like that. And you would then cut that on that 60-degree line through the center of where you folded, and the two creases cross. So that is how you would cut it. Let me just go through that one more time for the sake of doing that. All right, let me get this a little bit at an angle so my ruler can fit, because this is the one I have my 60-degree line on. So at the top, you can see that I'm lining up my 60-degree angle and moving it, back and forth, up and down, so that I get this. And so I'll cut all three of those. Now I can put that ruler aside. And we have our sets that we are going to make our blocks from. And again, you have a left and a right. All right? And you're going to keep the two pairs, and I just took them apart, and I shouldn't have, because that's not what you do. You keep them together. So to keep your two trapezoids together, and what I like to do, because it helps me, is that when I put them together, I'll just press them with the hot iron. It seems like they move a little less than they would if you don't. I don't know, maybe the heat holds that cotton together. I'm not very scientific. Alright, so I've got these sewn or placed together, and I'm going to sew down the long side, and I'm going to sew across the top. As I was doing a couple of the blocks this week, I found that I could just as easily and do it a little bit quicker if I simply sewed across and down. The pressing is might be easier. So I'll do both and show you what I'm talking about. But I found that I could chain stitch it if I went across and down. But let's go to the machine, and I'll do it the way she suggests in the book first, and then I will share my slightly convoluted method to you. I guess that's one of the things I tend to do is find, you know, quick and easy for me. And we're all different. I mean, we do things differently, and things work for one of us that doesn't necessarily work for the other, but I'll show you both. And again, we're going to open the seam, and someone mentioned to me that if they fold, press it to the side and then open it up and press it open, that it's easier to get the seam open. So that's another thing that you might try. All right, and then once you have that sewn there, you're going to sew across the top. All right. All right, so again, we're going to press that open, and you can see that as you're, you know, ironing and pressing, you know, this one is, and this is where I got my idea from, because I started it, I got it started, and then you're going to turn, and I just snipped the edge just a tad. I turned it, used my turning tool, and then I went back in, and where I had started to press that, I pushed this all the way, my little iron, into the point and got it flat. Now what we want to do with each of these is we're going to put and line up those seams, the center seam with the center seam down here. And I found that when I would go back and forth or even try to iron them, this would move on me. Just a tad, not always, but mostly. So I stuck a pin in there so it would stay straight before I pressed it flat. And that way, each of these steps is important, because when you sew the circle, you want to keep, you know, your points correct so that they meet. And especially up here, you really want these to meet. Down here, you can fudge a little because you're going to cover that. But here, you really want them to come together, and for it to lay flat, you really want that pressed well, and you want to have it pressed accurately. All right, so then let me share with you the other way that I did this, and this is the way that I was able to stitch them, chain stitch my blocks. And I didn't have to stop and press or whatever. And here on my Bernina, we have that little notch on the edge, for those of you who have this. And you might have it on your other machines, I just don't know. But we have a little notch there that gives me my 1/4 inch that it stops. So I can just turn it around and head down the other side. And when I put my next one in, get that all straightened. And I'm sorry I must have hit the wrong screen when I changed it. So it's a good thing I'm doing more. So again, I'll start across the top. Here's where that little notch is on my presser foot, right there. On the, at least on the Bernina, and you may have it on your machine as well. And then I go down the long straight edge, and I can do the next one again. I want to get that across there. And so again, I'll sew across the top. And go to 1/4 inch. All right. And I'm going to stop right there, so that we can talk about the pressing and then sewing them together, because I think you'll get the idea. All right, now for these, what I did to press them is, again, I just hit that little edge, and I open them, started with the long side, and pressed again, got the little nose of my iron. You know, those little hand ones would probably be really good for this, because they even have a sharper point, would really get in there. And so I just simply press those in. And again, we're going to align the seams. I'm going to drop a pin. All right. I'm going to give that a good press. You know, you could even use the Acorn flatter, best press, just your iron, whatever, if you wanted to get it a little, you know, the crease to stay a little bit longer. I didn't find that to be necessarily something I needed to do, but maybe at the end when you get the block completed. So now I have two of my what I call them Dresden type points. But I think I better go check. Well, Lynn, thank you for liking my convoluted method. It just made it go so much faster and easier, and I had 5 or 6 of these blocks done in no time at all. Okay, Kyla, thank you. You work on a quilt a week? Boy, I wish I had that ability to do that. Okay, all right. So now we've got our 2 pieces, and I'm going to fold them over. And what I'm really looking for is to get this side and my points together, because this is what is going to make the difference in that edge. So I'm going to take another pin out of the way of where I'm sewing and pin that in. All right. Let me go to And I'm going to sew down that side. And so you're basically sewing this as you would a Dresden plate, if you've ever made one of those, which is quite fun. All right, so now I have my, two of the pieces sewn together. Let's press it open and then take a look at that. And the way I pinned it, pressed it, this is what I wanted to have. Let me stick my finger under there. I think you can see a little bit better. Is that those definitely meet in the center. Your seams go down so that, they're not showing on the top side. And you would continue around with all 6 of your Dresden. And, you could make them solid. If you wanted to, by putting 2 of the same fabrics together to get these sizes, and you can make them any size you want. She gives you different sizes of squares to cut, but I think you could come up with your own sizes just as easily as long as you cut them through the center on a 60-degree angle. You should be okay with that. And they're just fun, and they're easy, especially once I started chaining them. That got very fun. So now let's talk about this center. She gives you 2 templates for covering up the center of your star. And I added a third. I used my hexagon ruler, and I made one that I knew. I just put this over until I had the size that I needed to cut to cover the circle. And so if you have a hexagon piece, so you could, sew down a hexagon in the center if you like that. She has, you could just simply put a circle like we did on the circus quilt, or make your yo-yo, which is quite fun and just sets this block off lovely. But to give you choices, especially if you're not a yo-yo maker. Now, I have a yo-yo maker somewhere in this house, and he could not find it for the life of me. And I even made my husband look. But I know I have one. So if you have a yo-yo maker, go for it. But I'll show you how to make a yo-yo. So I used a freezer paper template again. You don't have to turn it under, and with this flat, I just simply did because it's easier for me to sew around it, or I think it is. And so you're going to start with a knot, and then simply do a running stitch around the outside of your circle. And again, you can turn this under as you go if you wish, but you'll want to pull it in. That is helpful because if you wait till the end before you keep pulling it tight, it's very difficult to do that. And of course, if you have the yo-yo maker, that can even go quicker for you, I think. It's been a while since I've made yo-yos. So we'll just do this running stitch. And if any of you have any thoughts or ideas, please put them in the chat so that everyone can benefit from what you've learned in your knowledge. I I used to see, these yo-yo quilts made, thousands of yo-yos in a quilt and sewn together. Those just amazed me because all the handwork that went into that. Not that I despise handwork, because I don't. I love it. But that just looked like so much work to me. I think those were around the 30s when a lot of that was being made. Now this one is too small for, covering this circle, but but for my little ones, this will work just fine. This was about the size I needed because I made some little bitty stars. All right, so now you have your yo-yo. You've, sewn all the way around. Pull that string tightly, and then I will go back in and, run this so that it, it stays, tight in and through that. And then, because you're never going to see the back side of this yo-yo, simply take it into the center, bring it to the back, and tie a knot. And if you use a, thread that matches, the fabric in your yo-yo, it's not too visible in the back. So there you have another yo-yo, and that was pretty quick, painless. Linda, welcome, first time. Glad you are here. Do you ever backstitch at the beginning of that seam? It seems like it could really easily come apart while you're working with it later. I set my, you are correct in that, Lynn, to backstitch. On this machine though, I have a, that kind of a backstitch, or it knots at the beginning. When I set my machine to do that, and I do. Some people don't like that, taking it out or stuff, but I've never found it to be a huge problem. But yes, a backstitch would be a good idea at that, and because it could come apart on that if you didn't backstitch. But my machine, I can set that stitch, and then I don't have to backstitch, and it's one of the features that I really like about this machine. All right, thank you for that. And that will make, and you're using a large background piece, so you cut the background in a solid. You could even make squares and make it a a scrappy background with a a lot of different squares. But in the picture, let me grab it. And let's go over here. As you can see, it's one solid piece of fabric in the background with a inner border and an outer border. And the outer border is the same fabric as the inside in hers. But there's no reason why you couldn't make a scrappy background if you wanted to, or whatever, or a cute baby quilt. And the quilting, if you look at your pattern, has little stars in a swirly type, which is really cute and would be cute for a baby too. So let me make sure there's no other questions, no other comments. I missed what machine you have. I have a Bernina 770, the Quilters Edition. The lock stitch is, and thank you for reminding me what it's called, because I love it. It starts me, it just gives me a good start, and I don't have to worry about my seams coming apart, and because oftentimes I forget to backstitch, and so that's just helpful for me because I don't always see that. All right. So Next week we are going to be doing, I think it's the last one that we are going to do in the book. Maybe there's another one. Where are those pictures of the quilts? Here we go. The blended hexagons are what we're going to do next week. And that is this one up here. And again, you're going to find that it is similar to the last few that we have done. And then there's the William Tell that several of you have asked about. I would appreciate it if you would jump into the chat box and share with me if you are interested in the William Tell, or we haven't done the packages and boxes over here, and we haven't done the windows in my baby room or the fretwork. And so if you prefer one of those or whatever, if you would drop that in the chat box, I would really appreciate it. As I said before, all of the quilts in this book are just really fun, and they're colorful, and I will close this out before Christmas, and so whichever quilts that you would like to have in the next few weeks. All right, so if you would drop that in the chat box, I'd appreciate it. So next week we'll do another quilt from the book Rainbow Quilts by Judy Gaither. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And have a great week as you prep for your Thanksgiving holiday. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.